Hi there! I'm so excited to be here in Denver with Eileen McKusick. She's the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute and makes up the second of three speakers we have today in this important Biofield seminar. Eileen is a scientist and she's a practitioner, and working with tuning forks, she's been able to navigate the biofield, the human biofield, in a new way. And personally, I'm extraordinarily excited about it. She's been staying with Kimberly and I for the last few days in Colorado, and we've had a great opportunity to share our insights. And I know you're going to be blown away by the presentation that she's going to share with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Eileen, give her the etheric microphone, and I'll just sit with her for a moment while we get the system set up, and then I'll let her carry on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thornton. Thanks for doing this great presentation. It's awesome to have a platform to connect with people and share information about what's going on in this world, because if you're a member of the Energy Medicine Exchange, you probably are a body worker or interested in holistic health, and the information that we're sharing this weekend about the biofield you're probably going to find really interesting. So what I'm going to do is show you guys a slideshow of a presentation I gave last weekend at the Electric Universe conference. And so we're just going to go to that. In theory. There we go. And we're going to start the slideshow.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So this is all about what I call the Biofield Anatomy hypothesis. And we'll just go through, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to be doing this work and sharing this information. I wrote a book called Tuning the Human Biofield, Healing with Vibrational Sound Therapy, and that was based on my master's thesis that I wrote in 2012. That was called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield. So there's a lot of sort of academic and scientific references in addition to my own story in my healing journey. And is that not shown?
No, it's good. It's just that it's for some reason it's not showing big on the screen, but carry on.
Oh, okay. Hi, we're back for a moment. We're going to go back to screen share. We're going to get this the right way. Present it to everyone. Was it down in a corner?
Yeah, it was something. No, it was fine. It was actually just that the slideshow was big, but it hadn't fully opened. So I'm hoping it's
okay. Well, you go back and check, and I'll go back and see where we are. Oh, we don't want to go there yet. Okay. And I'm also the founder of the nonprofit Biofield Tuning Institute. And Biofield Tuning Institute is set up as a 501c3 corporation to do work on quantifying this biofield healing that I've been doing, and to also move towards scientific and academic consensus to some degree about the biofield. So we're really interested in exploring this, not from an esoteric perspective, but by applying the scientific method and getting together a lot of science minds to contemplate, especially what my work has revealed, which is the pattern in the biofield. This is the Biofield Anatomy hypothesis. So the reason why I ended up at the Electric Universe conference last weekend was because I was working on my master's degree, and I was trying to find answers to my questions about the phenomenon that I was encountering with tuning forks in the area around the human body. So I was, doing sort of scientific academic inquiry into this, and I was searching things like human energy field and aura in PubMed, Medline, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. And then, very serendipitously, one night, my son, who was 12 at the time, had gotten some books on science for his birthday. And he came to the dinner table and he said, "Did you know that there's a fourth state of matter called plasma?" And I said, like, I've heard of solids and liquids and gases. Somehow I missed that fourth state of matter called plasma. And so I ended up, after dinner, Googling. You know, as a researcher, it's so exciting to have gone to college as an adult instead of a young person, and to get to enjoy the internet in my research process. So I Googled plasma, and then proceeded to fall down the plasma rabbit hole. And for the next 4 months, I read everything I possibly could find on plasma, and I actually even turned it into an independent study in my master's degree. And it was a very exciting discovery because it really helped me to frame this hypothesis. I started using tuning forks in 1996 when I introduced them into my massage therapy practice. I had read a bunch of books on the use of color and sound and vibration and healing on the heels of reading Quantum Healing by Deepak Chopra and getting introduced to the idea that everything is vibration. And I remember thinking, well, if everything is vibration and I'm vibration, then treating vibration with vibration is very logical, it's very elegant. And just as I kind of got to the end of my books, I got a catalog in the mail that had this set of tuning forks for healing in it. And when I started using them, I assumed that a tuning fork was going to produce an objective input. But what I found was that the tone produced by the fork actually changed in the way that it sounded depending on where I was holding it over the body. So in some places it would go very loud, in other places it would go very sharp, some places it would sound like it was full of static. If somebody was complaining that they had, say, pain in their shoulder, I would hold the fork over the shoulder and it might sound really sharp. If I kept on introducing the fork into that area, after a little while it wouldn't sound sharp anymore, it would sound kind of normal. And then they would come back the next week and they'd say, all that pain in my shoulder went away. Like, do that sound thing again. And so in pretty short order, my massage practice morphed into a sound practice. And I did this part-time for about 10 years. I didn't really want to do it as a vocation, partly because of the image. You know, I was in Connecticut in the mid-90s, and if I told people that I was using tuning forks for healing, it just sounded very woo-woo and really elicited a very skeptical response from people. And, you know, I'm very logical. I'm always looking for what makes sense, and I did not want to be perceived as some kind of new age tuning fork healer. So I just did it part-time for 10 years. And then what happened, I moved to Vermont, and one day I was working with a woman who was complaining that she had pain and pulling in her jaw and her neck and into her shoulder, and she'd been to many therapists and nobody had been able to help her with acupuncture, chiropractic, osteopathy, massage. It just stayed. And one of the practices that I had developed in doing this work was I discovered that in some areas the tuning fork would go really loud. And I felt that if a chakra is an energy center, and that if it gets loud, it means there's a concentration of energy there. And at the time, I had no idea what the energy was. But I discovered that I could actually move loud spots around. Like you could use a magnet to move iron filings. So I could kind of hook into it and drag it along and then drop it in the chakra. And it would feel like it was being almost sucked into the chakra. And then it wouldn't sound loud like, say, over the hip. It would sound loud over the chakra. So I developed this practice of finding loud spots, kind of hunting down the loud spots and dragging them into whatever chakra was closest. I call it click, drag, and drop. So in this particular day, the body, like I usually did, just kind of listening to what was going on. And there was this very odd, loud noise out my window that made me go over to the window, look out the window, and then I turned, and I activated the fork at the window for some reason, and I started walking towards her with the fork activated. And I was about 2.5 feet away from her body when all of a sudden the fork flared up and it got really loud, and then it went soft again. And I went back and explored it, and it was a loud spot, except it was 2.5 feet away from her body. So I was like, wow, what's this? Like, who knew that they could be out there? So I hooked into it and I dragged it in and I dropped it, and it felt really weird to be dragging it, 3 feet to her throat chakra, but it felt like it was sucked in, and that was that. And then she called me the next day and she said, Eileen, all of that pain and pulling is gone. It's just gone. I feel great. And so the next person who came in, I started as far away from them as I could in my room, which at the time was about 6 feet. And I started moving in towards the body from that far away. And I discovered all kinds of things, loud spots and soft spots and walls and channels and like all kinds of formations in the field around the body. And when I started working in the field, several things happened that were very dramatic. One was that my therapeutic outcomes, which had really been pretty good up until that point, became dramatically effective. You know, people who had anxiety for a long time, it just disappeared. Pain disappeared. Emotional states shifted just radically. But I also discovered as I was going around the body that the tone would change in different areas that seemed to evoke emotion. So I noticed that every time the tone changed and sounded sad, that I was finding that in the area off the left shoulder. Every time the tone changed and sounded angry, I was finding it off the right solar plexus. And so it took a long time to emerge, but what I ended up coming to see was that the field appeared to be compartmentalized. So just like the brain is compartmentalized, different parts of the brain do different things, it appeared that the field was a storage system for memories. And every time you felt something in a particular frequency range or pattern, it would get stored in the same spot. So all the sad memories went in that file drawer, and all the times that we worried about the future went in that file drawer. And so this compartmentalized or stratified anatomy emerged. There also seemed to be a timeline aspect to it, in that as we generated information, it would move away from us. So stuff I found close to the body was current. Information I found all the way out at the outer edge of the field, where there definitely seemed to be a boundary of some kind, seemed to relate to gestation, to birth, and earliest childhood. And then everything else fell in between, like rings in a tree. So it was really neat to see this anatomy emerge and to find that it was consistent from person to person. But the whole process of finding things in the field and moving them around and shifting them really brought up a lot of questions for me. I wanted to know, what is this stuff in the field that I'm seem to be moving, and what law of physics is governing the fact that a tuning fork can move it in this seemingly magnetic way? So I was just very curious about it, and I was also really curious if there was a way to test this observation of this compartmentalization. So when I discovered plasma, and basically what plasma is a gas where the charge has been separated, where the electrons have split off from the ions, and it conducts electricity. So it's basically electric flow, and it can occur in all different kinds of expressions. So the sun is a plasma. The solar wind is a stream of electrically charged particles from the sun past the Earth. Stars are all plasma. Interplanetary space is plasma. You know, what we've been told is like nebulas, the pictures of Hubble that we send back that NASA says are hot gas are actually plasma, and it got electric charge to them. And so then I came across the term bioplasma, which was the notion that this area around the body seems to be a diffuse magnetism. And so I took what I learned in electric universe theory and kind of applied it to the idea of the biofield. So the idea that, well, we'll see it in a few slides, that like the magnetosphere of the Earth creates an outer boundary, what's called a double layer plasma membrane, that contains things like radio waves or the Schumann resonance. And because of this boundary, it creates a place for standing waves to take place. So I'm just going to play this video, and it's a little bit pausing. We were trying to play it before. But this is it's an animation of the idea that we have standing waves in the field that contain our memories, that pathological oscillations or traumatic memories are in the field as distortions, and that a tuning fork can be used to find these perturbations in the magnetic field, release the waveform that is trapping energy or light or electricity, magnetism, and then bring it back into the body. So that didn't, let's just try playing that one more time and see if it will work. Yeah, so there's that oscillation, the tuning fork coming in, harmonizing it, liberating the energy that's trapped there and bringing it in. And so when we do this, people always say that they feel lighter. This idea that we're restoring light or frozen bioplasma back into the system, back into circulation. You could also call those areas soul fragments. In shamanism, there's a belief that under trauma, a bit of the soul splits off and stays there. Even though you move away from it in time and space, it's still not an integrated part of you. And so this is a way, I called it sonic soul retrieval when it started to dawn on me what was going on here. It's restoring these bits of self back to here and now. So it seems as if these acoustic and electromagnetic frequencies and maybe some other kind of waves are held in standing waves in the human biofield. And these waves contain our memories, our whole life history, and also the life history of our ancestors, what I call energenetics, or the tone of the song of our DNA, is also, all of that information is here as well. These standing waves may inform and be informed by the microtubules on cell membranes, which act as antennae. In April, I was at the University of Arizona Consciousness Conference, and there was a lot of talk about microtubules, this sort of recognition that they play a role in consciousness in some way. And they were talking about how when people have Alzheimer's, their microtubules start to fall apart. And to me, that's perfect evidence that these are actually antennae that are, and also informing what is going on in these standing waves. And if the antenna starts to fall apart, then that ability to retrieve those memories is no longer there. The memories are still there in the standing waves in the field, but the brain, the body can no longer retrieve them. So these traumatic memories form incoherent oscillations in the field. These are very obvious when you are using a tuning fork. They are not subtle. I'm in Denver teaching a class this weekend. I'm teaching a level 1 class, and I've taught hundreds of people how to do this method, and I've never had a student who could not sense and find these perturbations and be able to identify what they relate to. For example, this one is in the solar plexus on the left side. That relates to mother, history of relationship with mother. If this person is 40, then that's around age 10. So that would be, something traumatic or very difficult that happened in relationship to mother around age 10. So the tuning fork can be used. It's pretty much like a needle on an album. A tuning fork moves slowly through the field, is like a needle on an album. It interfaces with the information that is encoded there, and it broadcasts it. And it's very obvious. You can hear it, you can feel it, and when you really get into the practice, you can actually know what it is and what it relates to. And you can certainly refer to the Biofield Anatomy map. This is the map of these features, these different storage areas in the field that I have found. That they're basically different states of mind that we inhabit. And when we have an imbalance in a particular area, if we feel sad or depressed a lot, we may develop some kind of pathology in the left shoulder. If we have a tendency to indulge in guilt-driven overdoing or overthinking, we might develop a pathology in the right hip. If we feel mired or stuck, we want to move away from some kind of stressor that we can't, we might injure our left foot or ankle. So almost without exception, I find that pathologies arise in areas where there are significant perturbations in the historical record. And when we treat these things, when we find these areas and we settle them down, it produces such fascinating outcomes. Just some of the things that we've successfully treated: pain, anxiety, depression, vertigo, digestive disorders, PTSD, addiction, panic disorders, phobias, adrenal fatigue, and really much more. Everything that isn't quite right is some kind of incoherent vibrational pattern. And so with a tuning fork, we can find them because the tuning fork will initially resonate with whatever is present. By placing this coherent frequency in this very specific area, the body becomes self-aware. And it goes, wow, that really doesn't sound good. And it actually begins to auto-tune itself. The body will actually self-correct given this very specific input in this very specific area. So biofield tuning isn't about using 139.2 hertz because that's the frequency of a healthy kidney and placing that on the kidney. It's about finding the place in the field where you experienced a big betrayal from your family of origin and the crazy chaos that is there that is interfering with your kidney's ability to function properly. And staying in that specific area, and it might be 4 feet away from the body, until that static and noise settles down into a harmonic expression. And then the body is able to function much better. The order, structure, and function of the physiology improves massively when you take the noise out of the system. Interestingly, it can also be conducted at a distance. People asked me for years if I could do this work at a distance, and I always said, absolutely not. Like, I'm using sound waves on the body. There's absolutely no way that I could possibly do it at a distance. And then I was persuaded by the fellow Dr. Carl Merritt, who wrote the introduction of the foreword to my book. He persuaded me to try a distance session on him. And much to my amazement, the same kinds of patterns that show up around an actual body being present showed up around my treatment table. And I went through and I took notes at every place where I found something significant and shifted it. I took a note on that. And then when I was done, I got on the phone with him and I went through my notes, and he said all of those, timeline occurrences are exactly right. And I also felt a pretty significant state change while you're working on me and now that you're done. And so I was like, wow, I guess I was wrong about doing this at a distance. And so I started doing it at a distance and learned even more about the field through doing the distance work. I really came to see that it's math. These memories are like binary encoded signals. And that even though the Biofield Anatomy emerged kind of from my intuition, my feeling into it, once I came to see it in its completeness, I saw the pure math and the pure patterns that were involved there, and they really seem to be universal. When my book came out, my private practice, which had already been about as busy as I could have handled, really went off the hook, and I got more inquiries than I could manage, and so I ended up doing a few experiments to see if I could work on groups at a distance. And again, kind of much to my amazement, I discovered that this work can actually be very effective working with groups, and that people feel energy moving in their body. They can be in Australia and I'm in America, and they are listening to me conduct this through the phone or through Skype. And I'm working on a whole bunch of people all at once, and they can feel energy moving, and they, are experiencing state changes as if I was really there in person working on them. It's very fascinating. It's been really interesting to kind of explore group mind and work on that. Very powerful. So we've been educated to think of ourselves as chemical and mechanical, and yet we're very electromagnetic, and that electromagnetic body underlies our physical mechanical structure and informs it. It is like our blueprint. That it's been shown that DNA absorbs and emits light. Biophotons is a word they gave to the light of the body. It's a coherent, it's not a thermal or heat-based emission. It is information-packed light that is seen as regulating body processes. It's not all about chemical interactions. It's about light speed communication. Your heart is an electrically driven oscillator. Your bones are crystalline, piezoelectric. When you bounce on a rebounder, you're compressing the crystalline structure of the bones and making electricity and radiating that electricity out into your body. Your blood carries a charge. Your collagen, the collagen microfiber system that goes throughout your whole body is a semiconductor. So you have all electronic processes going on in your body, and that's fundamental. That's, to me, That is mind and consciousness. So this electrical aspect, you know, again, we are taught about solid, liquid, and gas. We don't learn about plasma. We don't learn about the electric aspect. But, you know, nature tends to reproduce itself in fractals. And so fractal is the idea that these same shapes will appear at different levels of scale. So the idea of having a magnetic bubble might be the same as a photon. Certainly the magnetic field of the Earth is a plasma bubble that protects us from too much interstellar or solar radiation. The sun also has a magnetic bubble around it, the heliosphere. It would make sense that the human body, which also is electrical, north and south pole, would have a magnetic bubble around it. So just like, you know, the magnetic, again, coming back to the magnetosphere of the Earth, right, trapping Schumann waves, trapping radio waves, the outer boundary of the human biofield does the same thing. Now, again, coming back to this idea about patterns, plasma really should be called the first state of matter because plasma condenses into gas, it condenses into liquids and solids. So really everything starts off as just potential, electric potential, before it starts to form things like hydrogen, helium, and then on from there. So the purple image in the middle of the page here is a plasma formation in a lab. And the glyphs up at the top, these have been found on every single continent, these renderings of what seems like a human figure with these dots on either side. So there's a correlation to this plasma formation, a correlation to what I call the mother and father spots that are in the biofield. This is part of the biofield anatomy, that there are fixed points at the solar plexus chakra that are about 10 inches off the body. And the one on the right side holds the energy of your father, and the one on the left side holds the energy of your mother. And these are fixed points. I can't move them. You know, I can hang out in them. I can tell you about the personality of your mom or the personality of your dad or the quality of your relationship, but those points don't move. And so it's just very fascinating that those points are represented in these glyphs. They really appear to just be part of what it means to be human. So there are other ways that we see correlations between plasma formations and these features in our electromagnetic body. So the filamentary currents that connect space, right? A lot of people who've seen these pictures of how space is kind of like the brain and how everything's like points of light that are connected. When you think about the meridians or the nadis, there are these things in space called Birkeland currents, which are twisting helical structures that are kind of like wires that carry electric charge over great distances. And we see that helix fractally represented in the Ida and the Pingala in the Vedic tradition of energy flow through the body. Also DNA has the same structure. Below you see a plasma focus device and how it creates something that looks like a galaxy, but also how throat chakras, or any chakras, are represented as wheels, spinning wheels. We also see magnetic fields, the magnetic field of the sun, magnetic field of the earth, the magnetic field of the body. And, you know, in esoteric literature, there's this perception that there is a structure there. These concentric shells, that double layer membrane that forms the skin or the outer boundary of the field. So, you know, just seeing these repeated patterns, it just makes sense. You know, people hear about this and they're like, oh, that really makes sense. So it's one thing, you know, for us to look at these things and say, well, that makes sense, or I'm receiving this therapy and it's making me feel better. But how can we really quantify that, right? We live in the age where science kind of rules, and we want to put numbers on things. We want to quantify them. We want to understand them better. So luckily, I love quantification of things. It makes me extremely happy to do. And so I've had the opportunity to do some research and to play with some various toys. So this one is a medical thermal imaging camera that reads the temperature on the surface of the skin. This is Kimberly, actually, who had blocked sinuses. She couldn't breathe through her nose. And so I worked for a little while around her head and cleared the congestion in her field around her head, and then she could breathe all of a sudden. And then we took the after picture, which is below, and you can see that there's movement where there had been kind of stuckness and stagnation. Researchers who have studied biophotons have observed that organisms under stress emit more biophotons. So this is a scale that was on a Biophoton Counter. It's a device that you go in a pitch black room, and it actually counts the number of biophotons being emitted from a particular area of the body. So this is the throat chakra of someone before a tuning. And she got a 20-minute tuning. There was all kinds of noise and stress in that particular area from a very difficult childhood. And then we took the count afterwards, and it went down by over 20%. So the hypothesis was that biofield tuning reduces biophoton emission, and that is exactly what we saw with the counter. When I first started doing groups, I noticed that every time I did a group that the temperature in the room went up. And, you know, the scientist in me was like, aha, a data point. You know, let's see if we can record that. And so I conducted a group session in the Faraday cage, a copper room at California Institute for Human Science, where I've been working on a PhD. So we did a 1-hour baseline with just me in the copper room. The temperature went up 1 degree while I was in there in the middle of it, and went right back down again. And then a few hours later, 330 people used their mind and their intention to place themselves in that room with me energetically, and I conducted a session on them. And the temperature went up just a little bit. It went up 1 degree as people were kind of gathering. And that's something, a phenomena that I had noticed too in the groups without the control. And then it went up 2 more degrees while I was working. So, you know, that was just another interesting observation to make. We were also trying to count the biophotons, but that didn't really show much of a change in that particular experiment. This was, Kimberly and Thornton have all kinds of wonderful toys and devices for exploring the biofield, and this in particular is the Biofield Viewer, which measures the reflection of the light, how the light is bouncing off the body, and actually reveals so much about what is going on. So on the left side, if you look down in the lower abdomen region, you can see that that image is not balanced. And so I worked on that side of the body for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then this is what it looked like at the end on the right there. And you can see much more balance there. So that's really, you know, when I first started doing this work, I called it harmonic balancing. I called it sound balancing. It really is about bringing balance to the system, about bringing us into neutrality so that we're not kind of stuck and vibrating with something, you know, from our past that's out in our field causing distress in our bodies. And then this is just last week. I was in San Diego, and that's Chamonix's team, the scientists of Chi, the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. And I have contracted with these guys to test my hypothesis. Basically, the way that goes is Eileen claims that she can read these perturbations in the field, and that these perturbations correspond to specific memories. So can we test that? And so we're in the process of devising an experiment to do that, and that's going to go through an institutional review board. It's going to be written up to peer-reviewed journals. So, you know, this is an opportunity to actually really, you know, ask the question and maybe find the answer. Does consciousness exist outside the body? Because currently everybody's stuck in the brain. You know, when I was at that University of Arizona Consciousness Conference, it was very in the brain. And you know, I asked them, I'm like, is anybody exploring the magnetic fields around the body? And just kind of got crickets. So it's a, you know, a potential big paradigm shift here if we can demonstrate that this is what's really going on here. And we also want to move in the direction of creating a device that will show this, that will take this, you know, sonic information that's so obvious through the tuning forks and actually translate it into a visual image on the screen. You know, kind of like ultrasound, the same idea, with this ability to make this that goes a long way towards really showing, okay, there is a biofield. So, you know, the standard model says there's no such thing as a biofield. There's no such thing as an energy field. And all of that, those biofield therapies like Reiki or quantum touch or quantum healing, you know, that's all pseudoscience and woo-woo. But if we can actually demonstrate, hey, it's really here, and start to explain how and why these therapies work, then we all have way more credibility, right? If the science gets behind us, then we end up sort of bridging that difficult divide between alternative and conventional, between science and spirituality, which is just an illusion anyway, you know, and it's an illusion largely by language. So part of what we're doing here is, yes, you know, experiments to show what's going on, but also creating a new language that we can all agree on that doesn't have charge. So that's what's great about the word biofield, is that, you know, it doesn't have the same association as aura or energy field. It's sort of more neutral. And so we're just working towards building a language to describe this phenomenon that we can all agree on. So that's exciting too. Okay, so this is my website. It's biofieldtuning.com. I sell very high quality tuning forks. I've got a DVD with instructional videos on it. You can read about the different group distance sessions that I conduct every month. I do different ones. And there's also archived ones of ones we've done before. And you know, when we're working in the ether, just like the distance doesn't matter, the time doesn't matter either. And so you can listen to this recording that was created a year ago and still have the same kind of outcome as if it was live. So that's really neat. I also teach people how to become certified biofield tuners, and I've got listings of classes there. So if you've got any questions or anything you'd like to be in touch about, that's my email address, mckusick@gmail.com. Great. Thanks for listening. All right, Thornton's back.
Brilliant. Look at you. What a star. What a star. There's one thing that we really do want to do there, isn't there?
What's that?
Apart from blinding all our colleagues with
fractals,
whatever that is talk about this study and fundraising. So should I go down here and see if I can find your website so that we can pull up that beautiful window?
Sure, biofieldtuning.com.
And perhaps while I'm doing that,
we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, what's really exciting is that, you know, for years I have really wanted to develop this device, this idea that if we can make it visible, then, you know, that's really great. Teaming up with Shamini and Chi, they feel like it's really important that we test the concept first, that we apply the scientific method to it, you know, before anybody's going to come along and invest in some kind of device that might cost millions to make. Let's really show that there's something. You know, and additionally, I feel like it's really important to advance this idea of the biofield, not just in the circles where, you know, those of us we know, right? We know, we work in it, we know that it's there. But so we go to.
I'm just gonna do that. Just share the screen again as well. Hopefully, everyone will see this.
Gotcha.
We want to get that up, don't we?
Yeah.
And then I've just got to make sure that
everyone
can see that. So let's just hope that's right. Yeah.
Excellent.
And then if I get to your
Biofield Tuning Institute.
Right.
And then go to that one about the Biofield Tuning Institute.
Right.
So this is the page that's set up that actually talks about what we're doing, and the team. We got just an amazing team of world-class scientists who are weighing in on this. They're behind it. Shamini's written a number of papers on the biofield, and so to have her on the team is just really exciting. And so the organization is nonprofit, and we do have a donate button set up on this page. So, getting funding for doing something that's pretty far outside the box is not so easy to do. And so we are putting it out there that if you want to support and help this effort, this is going to help everybody who is involved in energy medicine. It will give us, something to refer to. So if you had, $5, $10, every little bit helps and will move us in that direction. So if Spirit moves you to make a donation to support this biofield science, this first experiment that we're going to do, we need to raise about $60,000.
So press that little button and do it and donate what you can. This is a great opportunity to thank Eileen personally for this amazing work she's doing. So without further ado, I'm going to send you off to have a cup of tea. It may even be time to make a sandwich. I'm going to be on the other side. shirt, and really look forward to seeing and hearing feedback from all of you about this fantastic program today. Thanks so much, Eileen.
Thank you, Thornton. Bye,
God bless
everyone.
you. Well done.